Every year in the U.S., billions of pounds of food get tossed in the trash. Much of it perfectly safe. Just because people don't understand expiration dates. Are we throwing away good food for no reason? We've all done it. You're standing in the kitchen, holding that carton of milk, staring at the little printed date, and wondering, is this safe to drink or am I about to regret this big time? Expiration dates feel like strict rules carved in stone, but here's the twist. Most of them are more like suggestions. Today we're going to bust some myths, clear up the confusion, and figure out what's really dangerous when it comes to expired food. Trust me, you'll want to watch this to the very end. It might just save you money, cut down on waste, while keeping you healthier. So let's start with the biggest myth. The idea that expiration dates are about safety. Most people assume the second the clock strikes midnight on that date, their food turns toxic. But that's not how it works. In fact, in the United States, there's no strict federal law requiring companies to set those dates. For the most part, manufacturers pick them based on when they think the food tastes best, not when it suddenly becomes unsafe. Think about those labels you see. Best by, sell by, use by. They all sound kind of final, right? But here's what they actually mean. Best by is really just about quality. It's the company saying, this is when our product tastes the freshest. Sell by is meant for grocery stores, telling them when to rotate stock off the shelves. And use by? That's the closest thing to a real expiration date, but even then, it doesn't always mean the food is instantly spoiled. Here's a real-world example. Eggs. If you ever tossed a carton just because it was a week past its sell-by date, you probably wasted perfectly good eggs. Stored properly in the fridge, eggs can last 3 to 5 weeks beyond that date. A quick way to check. Try the float test. Fill a bowl with water, gently drop an egg in, and see what happens. If it sinks and lays flat, it's fresh. If it tilts up or floats, it's time to say goodbye. Milk is another common worry. Let's say it's 2 days past the printed date. If it still smells fine and pours normally, chances are it's perfectly drinkable. The real test is your nose. Sour smell? Game over. Fresh smell? You're good to go. It's that simple. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Just because dates are flexible doesn't mean all expired food is harmless. Perishable foods like raw chicken, ground beef, and seafood can be risky if eaten too long past their date, especially if they weren't stored correctly. These foods are more prone to bacterial growth, and bacteria don't care what date is on the package. That's why storage matters so much. Keep meat cold, freeze it if you're not using it soon, and don't take chances if something smells off. If you had to choose between drinking milk that's 2 days past its date or canned beans that expired last year, which one would you pick? The answer might surprise you. Let's bust another myth. That canned and packaged foods magically expire on the date printed. Nope. In reality, canned goods can last years past their best-by dates if the can is intact. No bulging, no rust, no dents. That soup or beans are probably fine. Same goes for dry goods like rice, pasta, and cereal. As long as they're kept dry and away from pests, they can last way beyond the label. It's actually pretty fascinating how long some of these foods can stay edible. Why do companies set such conservative dates then? A lot of it comes down to liability. No company wants to be sued because someone got food poisoning, so they play it safe. They pick a date when the food is at peak quality, not the last possible safe moment. That way, customers are less likely to complain. But this caution has a cost. Every year, Americans throw away millions of tons of food because of confusion over expiration dates. Perfectly edible food ends up in the trash, and that waste adds up for your wallet and for the planet. Imagine tossing out a box of cereal that's still perfectly crunchy or canned veggies that are still nutritious just because of a printed number. That's happening in homes and grocery stores every single day. So, how do you know what's actually dangerous? The real signs of spoiled food are things you can sense. Smell, sight, taste. If the milk smells sour, it's bad. If bread is growing mold, it's bad. If meat feels slimy or has a strange color, don't risk it. Your senses are surprisingly good at detecting when something has gone off. Here's a fun fact. Hard cheeses like cheddar or Parmesan can often be saved even if a little mold appears on the surface. Just cut off about an inch around the moldy spot, and the rest is fine to eat. Compare that to soft cheeses, where mold means the whole thing needs to go. Of course, some foods are best treated with extra caution. Deli meats, fresh seafood, and unpasteurized dairy should be handled carefully because bacteria grow quickly in them. And if you're pregnant, elderly, or have a weakened immune system, it's safer to stick closer to the printed dates for those high-risk items. Now, you might be wondering, why doesn't the US just fix this confusing system? Good question. Some countries, like the UK, already use clearer labels. They separate use by dates for safety from best before dates for quality. That way, people know when food is actually dangerous versus when it's just not at peak flavor. In the US, there have been calls for similar reforms, but progress has been slow. Until then, it's really up to us as consumers to learn the difference and trust our senses. Let's circle back to that milk carton from the beginning. Is taking a sip a gamble? Not really, not if you use your nose, your eyes, and a little common sense. Expiration dates can guide you, but they shouldn't control you. Think of them as suggestions rather than hard deadlines. Expiration dates aren't federally regulated in the US and usually point to quality, not safety. Most shelf-stable foods last much longer than their labels suggest. Perishable foods like meat and seafood need more caution, but your senses are still your best tools for figuring out if something's safe. And remember, tossing food too quickly isn't just bad for your wallet, it's bad for the environment. So the next time you're about to throw something away just because of a printed date, pause for a second. Give it a sniff, a look, maybe even a little taste test. You might save money, reduce waste, and still enjoy perfectly good food. And I'd love to hear from you. What's the weirdest or oldest food you've ever eaten past its expiration date? Drop your answers in the comments. We would love to hear your experiences. Thanks for joining me today. Until next time, trust your senses, not just the dates.